to Faith and Friction, a conversation dedicated to igniting the intricate interplay between faith, religion, politics, and culture. I know that's a mouthful. Hi, I'm Mack, and with me is the Rev.
I'm here, ready to go, ready,
is.
willing, and able.
So we're going to dive deep into faith's unrest and unravel the depths of spiritual friction as it collides with life. What do you think about that? Think we can handle that?
We're going to actually lean into it.
Yeah.
We're not going to run from it screaming and shouting. We're actually going to lean into it.
We're
Maybe
going to let
God's
it collide.
there.
Yeah, we're going to let it collide. So this is the fun part about this whole thing. Yeah, no milk toast, huh? No milk toast. We're going to go right for it. I think everybody's going to love what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to get a little bit of a history lesson. At the same time, there's some current events that we want to bring to the front and just talk about the friction there.
Stay with us, bear with us. We will come up for air, and then we'll go back down.
We're diving deep. That's it. But, I do want to make reference to the previous couple of episodes that we did on faith and power, right? Great conversations, but there's so much out there, man.
It's like an iceberg,
Yeah.
We're touching the tip, and there's so much more. It's going to take some time to dig deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah, I can't wait to really just, again, stuff happens every day when it comes to that kind of thing.
We're living this faith and friction idea. We're living day to day. And the evidence of its value and our fear of it is everywhere.
Right. No, you're exactly right. So I think these conversations, if nothing else, we will look for, again, as we've said, we're going to look for the problem. Not going to call it problem. We're going to look for the friction.
Look for the opportunity.
Yeah, I like that.
And the word problem, the etymology of the word problem is just to ask a better question. It's to ask a question. So we're asking the questions that lead us into the benefit that was right in the middle of friction that we've missed because we run from the word problem.
We haven't minded, right? Yeah, that's great perspective. So there we are. So here's what's, if you keep your antennas up out there, there's no lack of anything that's friction-y out there, right? And so one of the latest, just part of this deal, is this grad student at the University of Oklahoma, and she wrote a paper in this class, philosophy class, and the professor gave her a 0. Now you got to say, whoa, man, that's like turning in a blank piece of paper.
That's harsh. That's like not doing the project at all.
Well, exactly. And so what happened was this instructor gave her a 0 based upon his take on whether she did the assignment as assigned, and his answer was no, she did not. And then part of the side comment was that not only did she not fulfill the assignment, but that the wording in it was derogatory to some degree, certainly to some people, him included. We're kind of peeling the onion back a little bit here, so they say. And again, I'm not going to be an expert on this.
Can you fill me in? Derogatory to his belief system, to his gender,
to his gender. Yeah, because the grounding, the thesis of this paper, it's not that long of a paper, so I don't call it a thesis, but the point of the paper was to take biblical example of male and female gender and relate that as the basis for the rest of her paper when it had to do with middle schoolers and how do you, gender-wise, and how do you confuse people and using biblical application to try to keep things straight.
Well, you're already asking for friction when you ask for a paper like that. That's been biased throughout the ages of men and women. This is an issue that we're afraid to address, but it's there. And some of the problems we have are as old as time itself. So I think that the professor has asked somebody to create a paper that's already asking for friction, and the student, it sounds like, I'm going to give you the friction that you wanted. Then we really don't want that kind of friction.
Yeah, and I can't necessarily. Maybe she picked the topic. I'm not really sure. I don't know if it's broad enough that this kind of thing, could be her choice and how she wanted to handle it. But of course, so let's talk a little bit about the friction. Right, so she submits this paper. She gets back a 0, which automatically creates some, well, I guess the friction was created in the words she used and the reference that she used.
Sure.
from the Bible. And I don't think the guy had a problem with using the Bible, but again, it wasn't used, in his opinion, in the correct way to prove somebody's point.
Warning, Will Robinson. You got a couple problems there. Used in the correct way, or the way I think it should be used, or the way I think it should be interpreted is already a problem.
Yes,
because that's really putting God and this beautiful book in a box, and it's way bigger than that.
We were talking about this earlier, that this scenario has friction that was added, like you're saying, along the way. Oh, here's a couple of Will Robinsons, right? And what we tend to do, all of us, and certainly what happened in this scenario, because now it starts the ball rolling downhill. All right. So now you have this friction as she writes the paper and he gives her a 0. All right. There's a friction point. All right. Then she takes exception to that. They don't get any resolution. She goes to the university and and complains and files against the 0. That's the next friction point, right?
It's starting to build. It's starting to escalate.
So you get the university involved now, which is every student's right to challenge, a grade that they get or what might happen. So I mean,
it should be built into the system that you can challenge what a teacher has done or said.
This is the next step she takes, right? Then though, and then what they do is, the friction on the other end is they suspend him. They don't fire him because they have to look into it.
Sure,
that's fair. All right. So, you have all of these. Now he's involved with the friction with the college. All right. The college is in the mix of it now. Everybody's rubbing against each other. Okay. Then she also files suit. All right. So now we get, when we get the government, if you will, we get the court, the legal system in this loop as well. Right. So now we got even more players bumping up against each other and creating friction.
Now you got lawyers involved.
There's friction to start with, right? Right there. Then the governor gets involved and he's weighing in his opinion. And of course, what's he doing? Oh, of course, we have to stand and make sure nobody's being discriminated against and all of this. It wasn't about the 0 now. Now it was about the social aspects of what she's challenging and going to court over discrimination, if you will.
The real question for me, was there ever a conversation that happened before World War III here ensued? Was there a conversation, hey, can we sit down and talk about this 0 you gave me, or what was offensive, or why did I get the 0? Is there a compromise? I don't know if that happened.
Well,
I'd like to hope that it did.
I think if I read through the stuff, that she did... she did challenge that. She wrote eliminating gender would put people farther from God's original plan for humans. So this is where the rub in the paper really starts. That if you begin to have transsexual and you have to call neuter or whatever you want to call it, right? There's her problem. There's where she's standing, and so. She reportedly asked her instructor to reconsider the grade. So, all right, so there was some conversation stating she met the requirements of the essay. Again, her opinion, but the instructor denied the request.
Everyone's got to examine their bias going into this conversation. If I'm going into any kind of conversation that's going to have some friction, obviously this one does, with I'm right, you're wrong, and there's no wiggle room there, then there is no possibility World War III does ensue. Now lawyers get involved and governors get involved. Have we lost the ability to deal with disagreement in a college class, in the government, in our human life, in our just day-to-day living, lost that ability to lean into, we have a difference of opinion. Can we sit down and talk about this and come to some compromise? If we're not willing to confront our judgments and our bias and the energies that we're playing on the inside, we're never going to get past that. Everything, every disagreement, every argument, every difference of opinion is going to escalate to the highest level, the highest court.
Yeah, and then it becomes an adventure in missing the point, because
it becomes
now
an adventure in winning.
You're all over the place. And this also falls back to our previous. This is faith and power. Right. I mean, this speaks right directly even to that. And the fun thing about what we're going to do over the course of this whole podcast is see how everything relates to everything else. I mean, nothing stands alone in it, in these discussions in culture, in religion, in politics, in faith. I mean, it's all working together. You're going to find the 7 degrees of separation from what, Kevin Bacon or whatever that used to be, you know, where everybody's going to be
6
connected.
degrees of separation, 6. I think.
Was it? Okay. So, you know, we have, I'm reading from the article that I said, so, you know, the university is a clear process for reviewing such claims, and it's been activated. Of course, people are doing what they can. Where I think that this started to break down was certainly a 0. Then as she goes back, and there's no wiggle room like you're talking about. We're not having any kind of a discussion where, well, why did you do this? Why did you say this? What was your basis?
Right.
Oh, now I see. All right. And so instead of a 0, maybe it becomes a 60 or, you know, whatever. But the point is,
let's talk about why it is a 0, why I want to give it a 0, and I'm going to give you another chance to make it be a 60 or a 70 or maybe a 100, just by changing a few things.
Right.
Now, of course, in academia, you can't do that.
Well, he got offended.
The 0, yeah, exactly. Yeah. The bias of the offense took the front seat, not the ability for somebody to learn, not my ability to teach, or for both of us to learn something. It takes the back seat to, I'm offended, you're wrong, you get a 0, I win.
Yes, and what kind of ripple effect does this ultimately have as well within the college? That now you have this scenario. Is this individual ever going to be able to go back into the classroom there regardless? I mean, especially if after they look at it and there's other people that review and, okay, you know what? He was justified in that. I can't see anybody coming out the other end of this thing saying, oh, yeah, a 0, definitely appropriate.
There was effort put in. There was thought put in. There was research put in. A 0 is just ridiculous.
But how often do we create scenarios based upon our bias? You know, absolutely, we got to go there.
Well, and when you do that, you not only create scenarios, you make them worse. This is how wars come about. We can't handle the tension at a one-on-one level, so we escalate it to the next level. We're going to go to the university. We're going to go to the lawyers. We're going to go to the governor. We're going to go to the biggest weapon. My weapons are bigger than your weapons, because we couldn't simply have the ability to manage tension and frustration religiously, politically, whatever it be, emotionally, it gets escalated, which is why families pull apart, which is why governments, why civil war happens.
Well, yes, we run it all through our own grid, and whether, you know, herd mentality, all that other kind of stuff. But maybe in this case, and we won't do the whole episode on this, but her decision, I think you came to this, you were talking about this in the beginning, for her decision to write this paper and use the Bible as, you know, her research, if you will, her foundation. She's perfectly within her rights to do that, right? Nobody's saying she can't.
That's one source.
All right.
You know, in any college class I took, you better have more than one source, let alone one that is perhaps as much literature as it is history.
Well, and then you run into the whole, and then now you run into academia at the secondary level, and you know, you get that stigma that gets put on them that they are, quote, anti-religious. They're way more liberal. You know, all that stuff comes into play. Valid or not, you open up Pandora's box. You know, and so how could that maybe have been done a little bit differently? And these are lessons for us to learn. This might be a specific incident, but how, you already mentioned it. Can we sit down and can we talk?
Well, and I examine in my own heart. You know, there are times where somebody says something or does something or offers me something, and there's that knee-jerk, I want to give them a 0.
Yeah.
Oh, hell no. No way.
Yeah.
If I cannot examine why am I so knee-jerk response into shutting down, putting a lid on it, just making it go away, I got some work to do inside myself.
Well, I think that's where it starts. You love to go there, and I love that.
Individually and collectively, we have to be working on this.
Right. And so, you know, in that whole thing, he finds a common voice in another professor that kind of affirms him. All right. I'm sure, you know, we always look for that. You know, give us the affirmation. Let me find the people with the same opinion that I have. And it doesn't mean your opinion's invalid.
Not at
That's
all.
not the point. The point is that we aren't willing, I think on both sides of this equation, and we don't know all the details. I get that.
I don't think anybody is completely guilty in this scenario, and nobody is completely innocent.
Right. right? And you have to look to the power. Agreed. And that's typically the case in anything, right? It's never.
But if I'm walking into this conversation or any conversation with, I have to have an enemy. I've made you my enemy. Quit now, because nobody's going to win that. Everybody will lose in that scenario.
I totally agree. And if you're going to use your faith, whatever that is, if you're going to use that faith as a means of almost like a cudgel, you're going to beat people over the head with it because the political environment will allow it, or the cultural environment will allow it, or whatever, then we also got, there's a faith friction right there.
It's a mindset that says my God can beat up your God.
Yeah.
My God can beat up anything and anybody in the way of my bias.
Yeah, and I throw the card. I'm going to throw the God card, And so then you get the politicians involved. And of course, especially, depending upon the situation, depending upon the college, whatever, but you get the governor coming in defense of this when in fact, you know what? I mean, this should be fairly down on the pecking order, quite frankly. Let the college handle it. Because
I look in my church. You're absolutely right. The petty little arguments that ensue within the small little microcosm of my church. And I ask the question, how did this get to my desk?
Exactly.
Why is this in my office when I've got bigger things to do? And so you ask the question, could this not have been handled before it got to the governor?
Right.
Oh, it's going to go to the Supreme Court probably eventually because nobody can sit down and come up to a compromise.
We politicize everything now. I'm both sides of the aisle. I'm not trying to pick on red or blue. And unfortunately, the minute that happens, there's an ulterior motive, there's more friction.
Yeah.
Right? Because now he weighs in, and then we're going to have him with friction against X, Y, and Z. So, we were talking earlier before we started about here's friction, A, in a scenario. Here's one. And then different people or different, sides, whatever you want to call them, wade into this scenario with X amount of friction. And then all of a sudden, we got more friction and more and more.
Do we have a society and a culture and a nation or an emotional makeup where we thrive on drama? I've known people that if there was not drama in the environment, they would go create it. Let me create something. Let me make this bigger than it needs to be because I don't know how to survive without it.
Yes.
I believe to an extent and then this might bump up against the idea of leaning into friction, but we create drama. And friction does not mean drama.
Correct.
Disagreement does not mean drama unless we allow it to mean drama.
That's a great point. I think they get all too lumped in the same pot.
Yep.
That, yes.
Different energies completely.
That's a really great point. So let's learn to have discernment between, here's some friction, but now we're going to create drama out of the friction. It's not automatic. That's a great point, all right? And we need to be aware when we're doing it or when somebody else is doing it so that we don't necessarily place our faith, confidence, however that might look at that point, your attitude of faith, in the wrong place. We don't have faith that's misguided, if you will. And again,
or
I'm not taking
a faith
sides.
that we're willing to sacrifice on the altar of being right or the altar of winning.
Yeah.
Okay, my faith is going to be just killed on the altar of being, every faith I've followed, and I've studied a lot of them, is kindness, is compassion, is love, is understanding, is that we're together as a human race. And if we're willing to sacrifice that truth, that's foundational. The golden rule is foundational to all of them. On the altar of, I have to win here now, everything gets escalated, and our faith is a house built on sand.
Yeah. Well, and again, faith is grounded typically in the divine, God. And that word starts to get bantered around, and everybody holds up their own banner when it comes to God said or whatever.
And it's really on my God said. That's my God can beat up your God.
Right. So anyway, the caution here is to just recognize these kinds of scenarios. And we're going to run into them in all kinds of different places. This happens to be on a college campus. And then lastly, I'll just mention this because we were talking about faith and power last time. Turning Point USA wades in on this. Now, this is a natural for them. I mean, this is on a college campus. This is, a student, and it has to do with faith, right? The Bible and faith. And are Christians on campus, being discriminated against? And again, the college campus is a hotbed for that kind of thing. And so, Turning Point comes in and creates their own friction. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily bad, okay? Don't get me wrong here. They create now an additional amount of friction, right? Because now they have an opinion. They put out information, stuff. They say things. They put it out on the airwaves. And again, sometimes this stuff needs to be said. I'm not disagreeing with
and
that.
again, you want to examine the intent. What is the intent about coming into the arena? Is it just purposely to create more drama, to be right, or to defend somebody, or is it to create a greater understanding and some compromise and some collaboration? I believe this was possible before it blew up to this level, that there could have been some good lessons for everybody.
I agree. We just, not enough of that was discussed or explored.
Right. And so I get to ask myself the question I'm always going to ask. Where in me have I lost the ability to sit down and have a meaningful conversation over a meal with somebody who thinks differently than me? And now I'm not going to put myself, I don't believe anybody's right or anybody's wrong, and that's going to cause friction here already. There's the guy in the middle, everybody's mad. So I got friction on the left and the right, religiously and otherwise. It breaks my heart. I'll be honest. It breaks my heart that we have lost that. I've lost friends over it. I've lost family over it that wanted to pull me into their side, defend my side. No, I won't defend anybody's side. I'm going to hold a container for a greater possibility. I believe that's what God's will is.
Well, yes. All right.
And we've used God as a weapon. Let's go back to the history. Read the Bible itself in the Old Testament. God's on my side. I win. That is the biggest fallacy that's ever been sold. As big as it is, God was on our side with this football game. That's just ridiculous.
Well, it's a personality. Again, it's the anthropomorphic type.
You've got to keep at the forefront of what is the intent behind the conversation and the dialogue? And can I walk away? It could be that I fight. I don't even say fight. I plead the very good case about this shouldn't be a 0, and I still get a 0.
Right.
Do I want to continue to escalate it? And
where does that go?
Where does it go? I don't know if anybody's going to win here.
Right. Well, What is a win? Well, what do you call a win? That he comes back and has to give a different grade, or you have somebody else grade it and give this girl a grade? I don't know.
Where there's got to be a compromise there somewhere. Where really nobody wins, because it's not a competition. It's we get to a solution.
Well, and the last component in my mind that comes into this is we're talking about turning point, but they're not the only ones. But most people come into a scenario with that the other side, if you will, or I hate to almost use side, but the other part of the discussion already has a preconceived notion of that person or of that organization.
Unconscious bias is already in play.
So did she already have a bias about the college? All right, there already could have been.
And maybe the win here is that she realizes I'm in the wrong university.
Well, if
I get shut down, thanks for the information. I'm now going to a different university that's more in alignment.
Right. Well, and Turning Point comes into this. If you read anything, and we'll talk about this a lot more, believe me, because again, they're not the only ones. But when you promote yourself as the fight, doing battle, right? That's what you say you're doing. And again, I'm not judging whether their premise or what they want to accomplish and what they want to do is good, bad, or otherwise. But when you come into the discussion with a preconceived notion from the other side says, you want to fight. All right. I already know this about you guys.
I'm coming in and defining myself as a weapon. My business as a weapon. My lawyer as a weapon.
Right.
And forget it. Nobody wins that scenario.
Well, but they think they are. The thing about it is when you can gather people around a banner that says, we're going to fight for what's right. Now, again, that sounds pretty pious. That sounds like it's the right thing to do. And especially if we put God on our side or the Bible on our side as the authority, we will think that we have a greater case for whatever it is we think.
And I go to my heroes, like Martin Luther King Jr.
Right.
You know, he espoused an idea, but did not go to war.
Right.
You know, stand and just shine a light on the injustice. Gandhi, shine a light on the injustice. This is more effective in the long run than, okay, I'm going to get a bigger bomb. I'm going to get a bigger weapon. I win.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that kind of leads us in. So that's what was going on culturally.
Sorry, I know we went on a bunny trails there, but that was a good topic to discuss.
This is real. This is real stuff. This is real people currently having to deal with friction, right? Now, take what you were talking about Gandhi, you were talking about Martin Luther King. So you're talking about some historical figures, current historical figures, if you can say.
Sure.
But, throughout history, there's a tapestry of faith. There's always been a weaving together of different points of view, in my opinion, about the same. It's the mountain thing, right? You climb up the mountain to one side, you're going to everybody's going to get to the top, and the top's the same.
Yep.
Now, different faiths will look at that differently. At the same time, you can say whether you believe that or not, even within your own faith. Right,
sure.
Your own faith structure. There's also a tapestry. Think of how many Christian denominations there are.
30,000 different Christian denominations, and they're all right.
Yeah. I mean, and yet they all have certain threads that are common to them, that they can find commonality in some degree, some better than others. But throughout history, you're going to find, it's so obvious, and yet we forget that there's voices from the past that we're dealing with. It repeats itself. We have, whether it's a Christian, whether it's a Muslim, whether it's a Buddhist, you have wise sages throughout the ages that have had to deal with friction to their culture, to their fundamental faith. And how did they handle it? Did they die for it? We were talking about that earlier.
Well, yeah,
right?
In many cases they had to sacrifice their careers, their lives, their reputation. Many things were sacrificed for standing up to challenge the status quo.
Right.
And in your notes you gave me, I tell you, it's a history lesson. There's a lot of them. There are a lot of women that have done this. There's a divine feminine that says, I'm no longer willing to be suppressed.
Yes.
And although they were put down and sometimes put to death, the modern religion that I see today is their ideas are woven. They're woven in there.
Tapestry.
So they did elicit change, but they had to sacrifice in order to do that. Sacrifice, again, I like etymology, is simply to make sacred. They made their ideas sacred, and that meant laying down their lives for changing the paradigm.
Well, you could go all the way back, to Greek and Jewish history. You're going to find these people that, went against the current. They did, whether it's philosophically.
We need those people. And this student, back to your student, had to go against the grain. She could have just fallen, played dead. It's a necessity. Right. Leaning into the friction to challenge the status quo, to ask the questions, is necessary for evolution.
Absolutely. And then, as we mentioned, I don't even remember, some episodes ago, when you talk about faith, it's the mystery. And so again, throughout history, there's two different kinds of mystery. There's the shrouded mystery that everybody has to buy into because that particular god or whatever is sort of unknowable, and the priest's got the inner knowledge, or somebody's got the inner knowledge of those deities.
Somebody's got the power in their hands, and they're not willing to share it.
There's the power again. So you have that mystery that's shrouded around somebody's ability to be able to discern what the mystery is.
Yeah.
Then you have the mystery, right? That, again, the mystics throughout history have always said, true wisdom comes from knowing what you don't know. Or at least acknowledging what you don't know, right? And so now you see these wise people that will be willing, and most of the time I found, and even in my own life, I know you found this too, when you start to go to the mystery place, to that place that you can't nail down, you can't, it isn't absolute, it isn't just right in front of you, I see it, I believe it, that's hard. And people tend to dismiss and discount and create friction because of that when there didn't need to be.
Well, yeah, it is put down because you're now going out of my comfort zone. So your thought, your process of discovery and living into the mystery is out of my comfort zone. So I need to put you down and to suppress the ideas that you're putting forward because they are threatening to my well-being.
Yes, and that happened in the early Christian church.
It happens today.
Today.
It happens. I'll be honest. It happens in my church. So what does Bob espousing that idea for? You're rocking the boat, Bob. And I like to say, go ahead and rock the boat. Let's do it in love.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I love that attitude of yours because some people can handle that and some people can't.
And I will own my uncomfortableness. You just espoused something. You challenged me, and I'm going to be okay with let's learn here.
Yes. And hello. And it takes, for me, it takes a blending of the faith, the things that are a mystery, the things that, at least at this point in anybody's life, you said, well, I can ground myself in that truth for now. Okay. So
I'm not going to hell because I just consider a different truth or a greater truth or an addition to my truth.
Right. Yeah, I've been willing to say, what did we say a couple episodes ago? I've been willing to approach this topic with a maybe. Maybe the student should have said, well, maybe I deserve a 0. No, I'm not judging.
And maybe that happened. Maybe there was a reason. I don't know. I can't crawl into anybody's shoes in there, but I know that there was a greater solution than going to battle.
Well, I agree with that. And so, then you start to mix philosophy in with faith and religion in particular. Right.
Well, your list of people you have here, that's what they did.
Yes, they mixed in the philosophy. And we have a list of, I was going to go over the specific people, but I think you can find a general, consensus that many of these, and there's tons more. I mean, there was just only 4 or 5 on my list, but you have everything from a female Christian mystic to the Cathars, that literally rewrote their Bible. So they came out with a different deal. It's similar maybe to what the Mormons have done, and they have the Book of Mormon. So you have all of these people and sects, and I don't mean cult, I just mean sects, that are looking at things differently.
Schools of thought.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Schools of thought, and that different schools of thought are either welcome in my environment or they are not. And again, just my belief system that if you have shut down to one school of thought, you have narrowed the focus of how God can be received and known, and you've shut down evolution.
We do it all the time, don't we? Because we think we have it figured out. And there is no more.
Is it that we think we've got it figured out, or we're afraid that we don't have it figured out? I don't lean into the friction and the debate or the different idea and school of thought because I'm really at the core afraid.
Yeah.
I am a house built on fear, not on exploration.
I might be uncovered to have no clothes. Right.
Oh my God, I'm naked.
Yeah. So these are such good things to bring forward from what many, many, many people in the past have had to deal with. Look at Jesus.
Well, put to death.
Come on.
Science and religion must be partners.
Yeah.
Spirituality and science have to be partners. And as long as they are labeled and put out there as enemies, evolution stops in both. I think science is going to find God before religion wakes up if we don't get on the bandwagon.
I think personally, it already has.
Yeah.
And here's was my final thought on this, right? And that was this: that when I started to learn, I grew up, and what did you learn about an atom? Let's just take that, an atom. What's it look like? You see that all over the place, right? The little drawing of the electrons going around, the nucleus, right? Okay, that's what everybody had in their head. That's what it looked like. And you have a whole bunch of them because you can't see, you finally got a microscope that got, down that far. But that's the way, it always was. Then all of a sudden, science comes in and says, oh, no.
We got to dig deeper.
Now we start to see there's stuff in the spaces. There's no space, right? And then, which to me was like really cool, because then it started to talk about oneness. It started to talk about a commonality that flowed through the ether because everything was connected.
Well, we began to define ourselves by energy and ether and not matter.
That Great way to look at it. Then the last thing that at least I'm aware of, all right, I'm not going to say I'm the definitive knowledge on this source, was that things were unpredictable and they only acted when they were looked at.
Yeah, my perception is actually dictating life and where it goes.
Exactly. That to me was God. I was like, oh my gosh. Now all of a sudden some of my faith, beliefs and perspectives got reinforced. They
Pay
weren't.
very close attention to what you're thinking because you are actually creating the reality that you either fear or don't want.
So there it is.
So if I come into the arena with the idea that you are my enemy, guess what? You're eventually going to show up that way. I'm creating the reality, whether that's the case or not. And if I come into an arena realizing that there can be a greater solution here, that I got a friend who disagrees with me, then you're going to eventually, it's going to take some leaning into the friction and some work. You'll get there.
Right.
But we give up too soon. It's
I think
easier
we
to
do.
make you the enemy and to make you wrong and to make you evil and make you bad.
Well, we're not going to give up too soon.
No,
We're going to keep peeling this back. We took that college paper a little further today than we really wanted to, but that's okay. That was a great discussion. Thank you.
I think so too.
All right. And now we had a little bit of a history lesson, but it's commonality. Let's realize what's going on. We've got a lot of good stuff coming up and some further and then coming
maybe
up.
we can examine some of these people in history that showed how to stand in the fire.
Right.
Maybe we'll get to that in a future episode because it's some really good stuff.
I agree. Well, listen, thanks, Rev, Matt.
Thank you.
I get my hair blown back every time when we do this, okay? But great conversation, and there's so much to this. Great value for me, and I appreciate your perspective.
Send you more of it.
All right, man. We'll see you. We'll do it next week again. Take care.